Hey, want to see something cool? Whoa. Yeah, it's Robbity, baby. Jumping Flash, a very early 3D platforming series that sadly didn't have the longevity which Sony was hoping for. See this? Old cutie Robbit here was going to be the next platforming star, up there with the likes of Sonic and Mario. And no pun intended, they kinda had the jump when it came to the game, starting life as a 1994 tech demo known as Springman. Yeah, 2 years before the likes of Big Super Mario 64. But Jumping Flash technically dates back to even before that. Meet Geograph Seal, released 1994 on the Sharp X 68000 home computer, developed and published by Exact. Its gameplay is pretty similar to Jumping Flash. I mean, they ended up sharing the same engine, and there's definitely an accuracy in saying that the core platforming gameplay of even the latest Jumping Flash never really changed from that of Geograph Seal, which can be seen as a negative. But I can twist it and say that means maybe they just had a winning formula. And maybe all parties knew that, with Exact later showing Sony the Springman tech demo the same year, and Sony teaming Exact up with Ultra to publish the very first Jumping Flash.
Jumping Flash!
Released in April 1995, about 4 months after the release of the PlayStation 1, comes Jumping Flash 1. I know what y'all are thinking. Wow, Spacey's finally reviewing a 3D platformer. And, gamers, if I can even call y'all that. I've already looked at the 3D platformer before. Perhaps maybe even the best one. Keep up, gamers. It's Glover. Don't forget it. And furthermore, I looked at the Doom mod Jump Maze, and that's basically an FPS platformer, so study up next time before going and asking me the silly questions, goofy. Anyways, let's stop screwing around and let's start flashing, or jumping, yeah. The story of Jumping Flash involves an evil astrophysicist by the name of Baron Aloha, and no, I'm not making this up, who's going around taking pieces of the crater planet in order to make his own resort. So the people of the crater planet are like, no, I'm good, and call the Universal City Hall to handle the problem by sending in the one and only freedom-loving, robo-heroic battle bunny, Robbit, baby. Robbit's got the attitude. Do you have the altitude? Yeah, I don't know, Manuel, that was kind of weak. And Robbit doesn't even have an attitude. They're a silent protagonist. They just have a death stare. But the altitude part is correct. This game is split into 6 different worlds, each consisting of 3 levels, ending with a boss level. Levels themselves have the player jumping around 3D environments to collect these carrot jet pod things spelling out exit, and eventually standing on the exit platform once completing that task and moving on to the next stage. What's cool about this game is that it was made around the time where there wasn't really a standard for 3D platforming, and what Jumping Flash did with this idea is something I'd arguably say is unique to this day. It's a very freeform and open 3D platformer with a focus on verticality. Robbit is slow as hell on the ground, but to counter that, they can jump 3 times. Yeah, 1 jump off the ground and 2 mid-air, which sounds overpowered, but that's what I like about Jumping Flash. I love platforming games with freeform movement and multiple ways to reach certain places. Games where I can put my trust and knowledge in both my character's abilities and how far I know they can go to move from one platform to another. I don't entirely care too much for platforming games where I know I will take the exact same path in platforming challenges the same way as everyone else who played the game. With games as loose as Jumping Flash, I really feel like I can express and test myself more with how I move around. And the game's maps really support that idea when they aren't trying to be FPS dungeon crawlers, but I'll get to that later. But there's a lot of times where players can straight up skip certain platform challenges, reach places using skills and knowing stuff like how bouncing on an enemy resets Robbit's mid-air jumps and the like. Levels are like wide open playgrounds where I can just look around, see my objective, and plan out a cool course of action of getting there. It rules. But there are some costs to it, especially in the case of Jumping Flash 1. The controls. Going into this game without a manual can make it difficult to understand it, mostly in terms of Robbit's movements. Like, I was getting super motion sick on stuff like how Robbit would just randomly fast fall on platforms until learning that letting go of the jump button actually makes Robbit sort of drop down. It's weird. And just getting used to stuff like Robbit automatically looking downward when jumping, alongside other knowledge checks like Robbit's mid-air jumps. At some point during a jump, Robbit like deploys their feet. And when this happens, the player can't do any more mid-air jumps, even if they had some extra ones. And there's not much for HUD elements reflecting this, more or less it's just a timing for players to remember. Side point though, I love it when I can look down in a first person game and see my character's legs or, well, feet. It just does something for me. I think it does a lot for immersion. So what I'm saying is that Jumping Flash is already better than 80% of the first person games ever made. Another sort of clunkiness to this game is because, well, this is an early PlayStation 1 platformer. Do you all know what that means? Well, let's take a look at the original PS1 controller made to play this game. Yeah, see the problem? Let's get into the controls. Robbit moves around with the D-pad. Up and down is forwards and back, while left and right is for turning, but diagonals can be held to move and turn. Robbit's turn speed is pretty sad, but luckily this is an old FPS game, so if I hold diagonals I turn faster because the game registers this as 2 movements. It's kind of like how in a lot of old FPS games it's faster to just strafe everywhere because the player is holding 2 movement buttons. This is helpful when mixed with R1 and R2, which both put Robbit into aim mode so I can look around, with once again diagonals being the fastest way to look and turn around. It's weird tech. So what's with the aiming? What's that about? Well, this is still an FPS platformer. Square allows Robbit to fire some hella early 3D beam shots that I think are rad. Robbit's other attacks are fireworks. Yeah baby, we got an arson robot who can party. Circle uses one of Robbit's 3 items, ranging from Roman candle lasers, cherry bombs, homing rockets, and wild Twizzlers. The player can only hold 3 of these, and they're pretty prevalent throughout the stages, so there's no real fear of losing these. Though I do kind of wish I could choose which one to use. Some are more useful in certain situations than others. Triangle and L1/L2 are oddly unused for the moment. They're post-game buttons, I'll explain later. As I said before, items are scattered around the map alongside enemies and jet pods. Among the offensive items are heals and power-ups such as Time Stop, which freezes time, and Power Pills, which... yeah. God, this Robbit to start tripping the hell out and become invincible, with a damaging collision hitbox as well. These are pretty neat, but I could definitely do without the silly filters they put on the screen for these. Like, buddy, I'm trying to platform here. And it's hard to be precise with Robbit brandishing a bong and seeing rainbows having the time of their life. But besides that, levels also have these rings leading to bonus worlds, where the player has to destroy all balloons. This is pretty difficult without using items, and the reward for doing so is just a 1-up. I think game overing sets the player to the beginning of the world, but I wouldn't know because I never game overed. I'm kinda cracked, baby. But as you all have seen already, jumping is going to be the main way players attack in this game. There's a neat feature where depending on how far Robbit falls actually affects damage, so long drops can be insta-kills, while small hops barely do any damage. I think this is a great feature in a lot of ways. When it comes to tougher enemies like bosses, just spam hopping on them will barely do any damage, and bouncing off them, giving the player their jumps back and having to aim that double jump onto the boss to do some real damage is really cool, because it's like a recontextualization of a boss fight to still be about platforming. Like, I need to be precise platforming on the moving boss to get the most damage. It's really interesting. And on the other side, the weak small hops on enemies can be important if I'm trying to ride flying enemies to certain points, with these low damage hops giving me some time before I defeat the enemy, allowing them to move to a place closer to my destination so I can jump off of them. This is one of the few 3D platformers where enemies needing multiple hits to be defeated isn't a bad thing, because in some ways enemies are a part of Robbit's movement tools. And yeah, maybe there's something to be said about how passive enemies are, and maybe that's why I can't see them as much of an obstacle rather than just moving platforms. Plus, look at some of these homies. How can y'all hate that? The visuals of this game are great, but yeah, I kind of always say that, right? This is exactly what I look for and think of when it comes to colorful early 3D worlds. It's just very charming, fun, and cute. I love it. Alongside the music, this game has some memorable music, like the first stage theme and having a god tier final boss theme that has some godlike hornage. Peak of the series, honestly. Just the kind of jams I picture when it comes to these early 3D games. Maybe that's a weird way to describe it, but it just perfectly matches that colorful energy of a bunny robot exploring a vibrant world to stop an evil doctor. Also, the psychedelic background for the final boss too. Now this is a vibe I can chill with. I guess I only talked about the platforming stages, but there's two other kinds, the dungeons and the bosses. So yeah, Robbit just randomly gets teleported into Wolfenstein maps at certain times, much like me in real life. And I mean that in the way that the ceiling and floor are very close together, kinda eliminating the platforming part of this platforming game. Maybe it's paying respects to Geograph and how that game was more FPS than platformer, but I don't know. I love hexing and play Doom mods all the time, so I can deal with these FPS mazes. But this isn't exactly what I play Jumping Flash for. Robbit's clunky and slow movements aren't entirely fun for this style, but I guess it's an alright pace breakup, I don't mind it. Bosses are interesting. I feel like a lot of them don't entirely stop Robbit from just jumping on them over and over, which I think is fine. As I mentioned before, bosses sort of being like a platforming challenge of their own. And while none of these are difficult, there were some that caught me a little off guard, and some of them had some pretty fun designs too. It is kinda ideal to store up attack items for bosses, because the reward is basically being able to chip off 50% of the boss's life if I come into the level with 3 items, and it's not like normal enemies are that bothersome anyhow. Though as much as I want to go super in depth on this game, this is a multi-game video, so I'll talk about some final stuff before we move on. See this keychain thing at the top of the screen? This is a supporter AI, something that the series expands on later, but they're the voice the player hears throughout the game, like a narrator calling out power-ups and the like. Though sadly this one, Kumagoro, might be my favorite out of all of them. I just like the energy, I think it fits for this over-the-top and cartoony world.
Great! Take that! Ready to go? Alright! Too bad.
And honestly, I thought at first it was Robbit's voice. The idea of playing as a yeehaw robot made me really happy. But nah, Robbit is silent, though I have a theory on their true voice. We'll get to that in game 2. Y'all are gonna be blown away. Also, side note, hot take. Silent protagonists are f***ing boring, and the fact that so many RPGs use them is because they didn't feel like writing an actual character. Exceptions do apply for player-created parties. Slam, slam, slash! Kumagoro also shows how many jet pods have been collected, which I kinda wish I knew earlier. Like, the game could have benefited from some more clear HUD information, because that's the only way to see how many collectibles the player has gotten. And like, it's cool that there's a mini-map, but for a more vertically oriented game, I was kinda expecting objects to have arrows to represent their height difference to Robbit, but maybe that concept wasn't much of a thing yet, but it kinda makes the mini-map feel useless a lot of the time. After beating the game, we unlock some new stuff. First up is Extra Mode, which is like a replay through the game, but with altered placements of the jet pods. I wasn't really about it though, I mean, it seemed like the same game to me. But it does change up cutscenes after finishing a world to just have these Muu Muus getting drunk at a bar talking about how they got stalked by Robbit, and that's pretty good. Oh yeah, the Muu Muus! From what I understand, Baron Aloha lives on planet Muu, and so these guys aren't entirely with them, more or less they just deal with them. They're cool, and funnily enough named after the company that did most of the character designs for the series. But yeah, they become a lot more relevant in the sequels. The next mode we have here is Super Mode, which is pretty interesting. Remember how I said L1, L2 and Triangle didn't do anything yet? Well, I hope so, because that was on the test. And I don't want to fail anyone here, but sorry gamer. Super Mode changes up Robbit's moveset a bit. For one, Robbit now has like 5 jumps. And remember how I said height affects damage? Yeah, I can decimate bosses with these hops. Second, Triangle now does an air slam, and not gonna lie, if watching this game already activated my motion sickness, this does it double. Which is effed up because I think this is a pretty useful tool for Robbit to have. I feel like this should always be part of Robbit's moves, just maybe a bit slower. I mean, it's like the classic ground pound. And finally, L1 and L2 is a run. I don't mind this either for base Robbit, maybe go a bit slower. But the problem is that this also affects Robbit's airspeed, allowing players to just zip around maps, which is actually pretty fun. So basically this is overpowered Robbit mode. I think it's cool that they included this in the game, it makes for a nice replay, but we do have to move on. So with Baron Aloha defeated, it's time we jump from one adventure to another, and hop on over to Jumping Flash 2.
Jumping Flash 2! Big Trouble in Little Moo!
Jumping Flash 2, released basically an exact year after Jumping Flash 1. The story involves Baron Aloha calling the Universal City Hall in order to help him with this guy known as Captain Kabuki, who has been going around taking chunks of planets and collecting them in bottles, and now he's taking Little Moo. Which is pretty funny because the first game involved people calling the City Hall because Baron Aloha was stealing parts of their planet for evil means. I also like how Aloha just ends up on a random asteroid that has a telephone booth. That's the convenient villain timing, right?
Using his keen sense of villain timing, Baron Aloha hastily departs the scene and lands upon a small asteroid. Unable to cope with the monstrosity that is Kabuki, he calls Universal City Hall and begs for help as his beloved hideaway is made into so much Swiss cheese. After listening to the Baron's plight, the interstellar dispenser of justice decides to send the only being capable of dealing with a menace such as Captain Kabuki, the freedom-loving, robo-heroic Robbit. Tuned up and ready to go the distance, Robbit leaps to the scene.
I guess while we're here, let's talk about the voice acting. The story is something that becomes more prevalent throughout the Jumping Flash games. Like most cutscenes after beating an area in Jumping Flash 1 was just showing Robbit heading towards the next area. But here we got cutscenes involving other characters speaking after beating a world. I like how Baron Aloha is asking Robbit for help, but at the same time he's like, yeah, thanks, but come on, Robbit, isn't that cool?
Robbit seems to be really getting to him, Baron.
Yeah, but just wait and see how he does with this challenge. He's not such a hot shot of a hero.
You want Robbit to win, don't you?
Also love the Muu Muu's voice. Oddly enough, Aloha picked up a German accent for this game, which I mean he barely talked in the first game, so it's whatever. But it's clearly wanted to make these voices more distinct and over the top and traditionally cartoony. Don't take that the wrong way, I'm not trying to say German people are cartoony and evil, but I swear a lot of cartoons had like monocle German accent villains. And I don't know, I've heard German people speak English and it's not this over the top. Speaking of over the top voices, Captain Kabuki has that voice. Y'all know the one.
Naughty, naughty, naughty little space bunny. Oh, I could give your tail such a nasty tweak.
Yeah. I like the narrator's voice. They have some humorous lines, but let's jump into the actual game. Gameplay-wise, Jumping Flash 2 is exactly what I expected it to be. It's Doom 2. I know what y'all are thinking, Spacey, what the hell? And quiet, homie, this is Doom 2. Mostly the same with minor updates, new maps, new enemies, and hell, Robbit even gets the super shotgun. I mean, it's called power orbs, but its use is like a super shotgun. I'd show myself using it up close, but it's a bunch of colorful balls rapidly exploding, and I remember that kind of hurting my eyes, so maybe it's better if I don't. Still, cool weapon. Shame it's only in this game. But yeah, back to Doom 2. A lot of what I said about the gameplay from the first game is all intact, but there have been a few updates and changes, and chances are, y'all can already notice some of them. It's pretty weird going back to Flash 1 after getting used to this game's HUD. This game really sought to update it with much needed information, which is kinda useless because this is a sequel and already had to endure the first game, but especially the jump bar, which gives the player a better indication of when they can use their mid-air jumps. Which was actually kinda hard to get used to at first, as I was just so used to looking at Robbit's feet, which is my favorite pastime of course. But there's also some weird stuff like still being able to jump when the bar's going down, and the bar started making me think of Hot Shots Golf. Like, why does this game keep appearing in all my videos? I don't know. I found it more helpful in Jumping Flash 3. And still just relied on my train timing and watching for Robbit's feet. Though the okay to let the player know whether or not they can still use their jumps is pretty useful. The next thing of note is, of course, Moo Moo! Moo Moo! Moo Moo! Moo Moo! I know what y'all are thinking. Spacey, that guy is speaking facts. And so true. But the Moo Moos are the new 4 collectibles that we have to gather in order to progress throughout the stages, with them even having different expressions and holding up signs spelling exit. I guess this makes more sense than the random carrot jet pod things, but at the same time I feel like if our mission is to break the bottles and save the planet, then the moves are going to be saved by default, right? The last thing of HUD to note is our new support AI, Kumagoro 2, but also just known as Bill in the English version. There's nothing really special about the voice, it's just very normal, but I guess encouraging, I don't mind it.
Got him! Got them all! Yummy! Let's do it!
Kind of reminds me of like those cartoons where you had like the main hero, but he was useless, but he had like the actual main character that the show's named after, like a robot. I'm getting off topic. This is all ad-lib. I didn't put this in the script. What am I doing? But to further show examples of a higher focus on voice work, there's 2 more unlockable support AIs. The wiki refers to Ted as a surfer voice, but honestly it just sounds like a creepy old man trying to be cool. I don't know what they were going for this one.
Killer! Ready to rock? One down. Tasty. Let's boogie.
Then there's Rachel, which I knew just from how cartoony the voices are in this game exactly what kind of voice Rachel would have, and I was not surprised in the slightest when I heard her.
Let's go. Almost done. Very good. Excellent.
Anyways, I need you all to listen to this now. Here's the big idea I was talking about earlier. No matter what voice the player has equipped, Robbit still has the same death voice. So in my mind, this is the only time in the series we get to hear Robbit's true voice, as they fall to their death. And it's hilarious. I mean, hey, apparently it's true. Look behind the voice actors. Robbit's got a voice. Okay, one more time. Anyways, Sorry, I couldn't help myself. One more time though. Okay, anyways, compared to the first, I think I can say I enjoyed the levels in this one more. Maybe more or less just in presentation. Areas like Aloha's beach place with bar, which for some reason is like the iconic location of the Jumping Flash series. It appears in like every game. The area with the flying animals the player can ride on, getting blasted out of cannons at the carnival. Or how about the castle with the clouds and the rainbows? Happy Pride Month, my gamers!
Yes.
And yeah, it definitely feels like some repeated themes at points. Like both games have a carnival level with like rides the player can get on, a finale space level, but I still think it's different enough. And I'll take these over typical grass, desert, water, fire worlds. I wasn't sure about the music at first because I don't know why, but something about some of the tracks in this game had something up with them. Like, listen to this. What the hell was that random steel drum? I'm still not sure if this was a sound effect or what. I'm the kind of monster that lowers sound effect volume and increases music volume at the start of every game. But going back and listening to both of the soundtracks like back to back, I think it's about even. There's some ups and downs. I mean, it makes sense. These games were made not too long from one another. Same composer too, the late Takeo Miratsu. Just a fun, upbeat, happy soundtrack for this vibrant game. But as I kind of said before, I think I might prefer the level design to this game. It's obvious the devs had more of an idea of what to do with Flash 2, and even the closed-in Wolfenstein sections are a lot more like Doom themselves. And by that I mean they have a bit more verticality. But still, it's more of what we had with the first game, hopping around a 3-stage per world structure, getting 4 schmackies to jump on the exit pad, passive as hell enemies, and bosses with cool designs but still get slapped up by items. So, what's there to talk about? Well, there's a weird achievement system throughout the game, which are these symbols the player sees on the world map. The only problem is that nothing ever told me in-game what these mean, so I didn't care. Oh, extra mode. Super mode is also back, but whatever. Extra mode. So at the end of the game, we fight and beat up Captain Kabuki. Final boss theme not as good as the first game, but that's irrelevant. Little Moo is saved. Everyone daps up Robbit. But then we get this ending with Aloha and Kabuki teaming up to take down Robbit. Oh, so Jumping Flash 3? Nah, we get booted back to the title. No credits, the game ain't done yet. Even the title screen now sorta has an episode select going on. This is the new extra mode.
Big Trouble in Little Moo, Two Faces of Baron Aloha.
So did they put more effort into extra mode this time? Dare I say, did they put some extra effort into... Okay, I'll stop. But the answer is yes. New cutscenes, levels with vastly different layouts and different palettes. Hell, even bosses have been redesigned, new appearances, arenas, and new attacks. This is it. And I never struggled, but I did time out on the final boss, just because I wasn't damaging it fast enough, which I appreciated. I even had to come up with some strategies on bosses. It was cool. Maybe some people will call this cheap, but I think this is a fun way to replay the game. It feels different. Once again, mid-game cutscenes involve the Muu Moos talking it up in the bar, with the ending straight up being the Muu Moos kicking out Baron Aloha, siding with Robbit and being tired of Aloha's BS. Which is kinda like the last time we canonically see the guy. I'll explain that later. The ending credits is a bit weird and a lot telling, because they just use the same FMV as the Japanese credits, which means they're crediting the Japanese voices and such, with seemingly no credit given to the English localizers and voice actors. Jumping Flash 1 actually does it too in its credits. Like, was this just a thing that happened at the time? It's kinda weird. Farther weird is the rap song that they're playing here. I'm pretty sure it's in the voices of these characters, which would be cool, but it's also in Japanese, so I guess these are the Japanese voices, but I wouldn't know, I didn't play that version. And the cherry on top is that the enemy names still use honorifics like Kun and San. It's honestly kind of embarrassing that this made it to the final product. I'm not going to say they were, excuse the word, lazy or something. That'd be very game reviewer ignorant of me to say. And either way, I'm assuming a situation that I have no knowledge towards. I wasn't there when they made the game, but I don't know, something about the near exact, pun intended, year between release dates, I don't know, that kind of screams time restraints to me. Even some of the enemies still have Japanese textures on them. I don't have a problem with this, I mean, I just think it's interesting to point out. Anyways, we're done with Jumping Flash 2. And overall, I think Jumping Flash 2 is a more realized creation. If Flash 1 was the prototype, then Flash 2 is the more finalized idea. It's not substantially better, but it's just full of minor improvements that make going back to the first game a small bit jarring, such as how the time stop power-up revealing the location of the remaining moves. Same with standing on the exit pad, just a small but excellent addition, and that's what Jumping Flash 2 is, excellent. And to a lot of people and fans, this is the premiere, the prime, Jumping Flash experience. And also to a lot of people, this is where Jumping Flash ends. This is where it all ends, right? the series is over, right? And no, we still have one more game to look at. One that is seen as either the worst Jumping Flash game or... Anyways, get ready for a new take. Get ready for the next chapter of Jumping Flash. Get ready for... Pocket Moo Moo? What the hell? No, we got the wrong game. God dang it. Okay, we're going downhill. Okay, so the gap between Flash 1 and 2 was a year, and I don't know why this game came out 3 years after Jumping Flash 2. Pocket Moo Moo is different. See, there's this device known as the Pocket Station. There was actually functionality within Racing Lagoon, but I didn't mention it in the video because I honestly didn't care. This was never released outside of Japan, and even when it became an app for the PlayStation Vita, it was still Japan only. So what is it? The Pocket Station was like a miniature console with simple LCD games. But it also served as a memory card, and that connection with the game is how the player could download games onto the device. So games would be compatible and have mini games and such to download onto the device, which could be awkward when the game got localized and that stuff is still there. Once again, Japan exclusive. I don't know why Jumping Flash was brought back for this, but that is the main idea of Pocket Moo Moo. Going around and collecting these games, which can likely be played in-game. I don't need to pull out the Pocket Station. There's a world map of 3 areas. An area to buy stuff like games and other neatos, an area to play games, and this sort of construction plot place. The idea is to play these games to get in-game currency, used to buy more games and apps, and also buy attractions for this land plot, which I think is pretty neat. I was honestly surprised that there were segments to explore at all. I was expecting this to just be a menu game. There's even a unique support AI just for this game, with a time and money layout. Robbity is a little funky in this game. They're still pretty slow, and I actually had to look down to make sure that I was actually Robbity, because this game only has one jump. Yeah, Robbity only has one jump. Robbity only has one jump. What did you do to Robbity? What's happening? Okay, it's not that big of a deal. I don't think this is even canon. I mean, maybe it takes place before the series. Like, Baron Aloha is just chilling here with the Moo Moos, which he got kicked out. That dude got evicted. And he's just here giving the hot gamer tips. This is just a small spin-off game. I definitely didn't beat this game. I mean, I wasn't even going to cover it, but hey, when else will I talk about this? What it barely has anything to do with Jumping Flash. These characters could be replaced with anything. The identity just isn't here with the gameplay. The minigames I got to play were alright, like for a try or two. And I like how they had star goals to work towards. None of the ones I got to play really stood out, but I thought this matching one here was pretty cool. But some of these are so easy, I had to purposefully lose just to move on. I mean, there is an idea with a working gameplay loop, but it just felt like I had to grind so much to get anything. And by the end of my footage, it's clear I was finding more entertainment exploring and jumping around these 2 areas. I was longing for the Jumping Flash I knew and loved, and this wasn't it. But it is pretty neat, just kinda aged poorly. Feel bad seeing a series I like make a game for a gimmicky peripheral that didn't do well. Though I will say the disc for this game is pretty great. I feel like there isn't really any reason to play this game, but it's an interesting time capsule. Y'all may be thinking that this is a rather sad end to the series, but baby, we actually do have one more game, the final one. Get ready for minds to be blown, for lids to be flipped, because this is the game I've been waiting to tell you all about. The next and final chapter of the Jumping Flash series. What could it be? How will it play? Well, let me tell you all about Robbity Bonjour. Quite literally translating to Robbity My God, which is such a godlike title. But this is basically Jumping Flash 3. It's like Evil Dead, right? We got Evil Dead 1, 2, and Army of Darkness, but Army of Darkness is basically Evil Dead 3. And that's how it is here. I'll probably use the titles interchangeably to help make things as confusing as possible. So, here we go. Golly gee, this game. Both this game and Pocket Moo Moo were made by Sugar and Rockets, which might sound scary, but really this is just what Exact, the OG devs for Jumping Flash, were merged into. Coming out later in the same year as Pocket, just from the intro alone, we can tell we're in for a very different game, showing off a wide cast of characters, and of course our robot friend Robbit, who's gotten quite the colorful paint job this time around. And I don't care what y'all think, but I think Robbit looks clean. I love Robbit in this game. They're just so adorable. So the big difference with this game is its larger emphasis on narrative, which also might be why people hate this game, or at least don't like it. Gone is the arcadey level-to-level structure. Now we're traveling a world map, reading mail, buying cards at the card shop using money we get from being graded in the new mission-based structure. The story of Robert Monsieur is very different, and dare I say brave. It's not just basically the same thing like Flash 2 was to Flash 1. Baron Aloha is gone, and I mean it, he's not in this game. The world is saved, and Robert is going on vacation. Or so they thought. But with no seemingly world-ending events, the people of the planet Hananuma are all struggling with various problems. Simple stuff like, hey, can you take me home? I need to collect my flying laundry, do this obstacle course, stop this airport bombing. Wait, what? Oh god! The game takes a more mission-based structure, going to various spots on the map where people need help, with most characters having sort of a theme to their missions that escalates, like the obstacle challenges or Johnny's carrots. Side note, this has been bothering me for a while, but listen to the movement sound on the map. What game does that remind y'all of? Some RPG, I swear, uses this sound too. Like right now, all I can think about is the Moogles from Final Fantasy IX, but I swear I've played something recently where this is like a menu sound or something. It bothers me immaculately. God, I love Robbit. Wait, what were we talking about again? And yes, this is the best Robbit design. Do not at me. Anyways, out of all the Flash games, this one definitely could have benefited from a translation the most. But that's also probably why it didn't happen. See all this text, these cutscenes, all of this is fully voice acted by a cast of different VAs, which kind of just shows their higher interest in a world and story here. At first, I was kind of bummed that I couldn't read any of this, but then I realized that we live in the modern age and I can at least scan translate to try and parse meaning, which was kind of a pace killer, but whatever. I was clueless on the cutscenes though, and just had to make interpretations. I only understood like 2 lines of dialogue, like when this guy said Kuso. And this kid calling Robbit Oni-chan, which can be older brother or sister depending on spelling. Speaking of which, I've referred to Robbit as gender neutral throughout this video, but a lot of characters call them he. But hey, I'm agender and everyone incorrectly calls me he, so I think we should get the answer from the big robot themselves. Hey Robbit, what are your pronouns, buddy? And there we have it. Need I say more? Thanks for the answer, Robbit. Anyways, this game's character design rules. Like, I could point in so many directions, but I just adore a lot of this stuff. I like that this game departs so much from a lot of the stuff from the first game. It feels more like an expansive world that doesn't need to be anchored down by reoccurring characters. Like, it takes a bit before even the Muu Muu show up. And there's some neat characters, like the Super Sentai people, the president guy. I love how he talks even if he's kind of weird. Or the evil weasels or whatever, but I don't think they're all that bad. I like the scene where this annoying kid blows them up and Robert's just like, hey man, you didn't need to do that. I like the bonsai tree guy, even if there's only like 2 missions with him. The author, Mr. Estragon, like just look at his concept art, and his publisher or something friend who's always popping off for him. One of my favorites gotta be Johnny though. I don't even know what he is, but just a farmer with an obsession with his carrots and wanting us to Pakan the moles who try to steal them.
早速だけど悪いモグラをポッカーンと退治してくれないか。モグラをポッカーンと退治してまた悪いモグラをポッカーンと退治してくれないか。頼む。またポッカーンと退治して。
I was kind of iffy at first about the chief who does all the talking for Robbit and probably has the most dialogue in this game. The player only sees him like once in a drawn cutscene, but he has a really cool design. And seeing him and Jean-Paul Hanada being bros is pretty cute. Hanada is like this mini antagonist trying to be better than Robbit with his own robot rabbit thing. There's a lot I don't understand, like, is Hanada being controlled by the training guy? Is Robbit being controlled by the chief? There's some stuff I just don't get. But regardless, Hanada's not really a villain, and that's what I kind of like about this game. Just getting a glimpse of the lives of all these different characters and Robbit's influence and arrival. It really does feel like an outsider visiting this planet in motion. But that's also probably why a lot of Jumping Flash fans don't like this game, or at least not as much as the other ones. Not including Pocket Muu Muu, we aren't counting the existence of that game anymore. Because a lot of people who tried this can't read the text or understand the cutscenes. And a big appeal to this game is the charm and world. When that's taken out, it's like, why do I have to sit through dialogue, cutscene, and all these load times just to finally play Jumping Flash for like 20 seconds until I have to sit through it all again? Still, the characters, the world, the music of this game, which I'll get to, is also good at creating such an interesting vibe. I wish more people would play this game just for that. Like, if game devs started making protagonists and such that look like this, buddy, we'd be in a better place. Before you get to the gameplay though, I'll say that I love the look of this game. It might seem to look the exact same as the other games so far, but trust me, if y'all compare this to Jumping Flash 1, there is a stark difference. Like, I don't know, this is like a 1999 PlayStation game, and I just think it looks impressive. And I do like the vibe some of these levels give off, especially the ice level, which I can't show because, okay, I may have secretly lost my footage for the last third of the game, but we're gonna make it work, just trust me. Here we go, somebody 100% of the game. Yeah, there we go. Cool level, right? Also, soundtrack wise, this might be my favorite of the series. There's such a cool style to some of the songs, like listen to the Ice Tower theme. What a slappy. Jumping Flash the movie is also a highlight, maybe even the universe. Such a grand and beautiful song for such a strange final boss. It really adds to the awe-inspiring and confusing feeling that fight gave off. Or Village of the Four Towers, which goes for like some reggae stuff, which, listen, reggae rules. And y'all know what? I bet Robbit loves reggae. Hey Robbit, you jammed to reggae too? I bet it's your favorite genre, right buddy? Come on. Classic. I love this rabbit. Okay. It's time to stop screwing around. Because it's time to talk about the gameplay. So levels are quick and mission based, meaning there are different goals to each levels, from defeating enemies to making it to the end of the level or collecting things. This game makes it very clear what the objective is, so if anyone's going in not able to read, then they'll be okay. Robbit's moveset is as we know it, but there are some small changes and new additions. Robbit can now only carry one weapon, with the weapon being equipped on the world map. There are some robots running around some maps trying to scam Robbit's pockets, but they aren't too necessary. Here's something nice though. Remember Robbit's ground pound in super mode? Well, we got it now. Robbit doesn't super speed slam, so it's not dizzying, and there is a cooldown to it, but I think it's a very welcome addition overall. God, I wish Robbit would do this to me in real life. Robbit's square laser shots are now just a single left right missile. It feels slower than the lasers, and I just don't like this change, especially with how much more limited Robbit's combat is with only having one weapon at a time, meaning that the player will have to rely on the missiles more. But everything else is the same, even with how I'm still using the D-pad to move around and looking with the diagonals just to turn faster. There is something to say about the gameplay pacing for this game, because the player gets to choose what kind of missions they want to do from certain characters. It's pretty open. It's not just 2 stages and a boss, it could be anything depending on the player's choices. The mission structure is varying. Sometimes we get full-on obstacle courses, other times we're just running over the same map over and over with little differences. Kinda gives me some Proto Mario Sunshine vibes in that case. There's something cool about going to the same map again and exploring the different parts that weren't relevant the first time around, or like seeing new platforms added onto it. Not every mission is very interesting, and not every mission is fun, but I think it's a neat attempt. It can be said this is variety, or just a lack of focus. Much like in real life, the money system here kinda blows. I mean, it's completely optional, but the money and completion rank system do not mesh well. So, the player gets money from completing levels, based on certain statistics that I can't really read. I think one is no damage, one is based on head stomps, and maybe the other one is whether or not the player got an excellent rating. Which sort of means the player can just win levels and not get any money if they did poorly. There's an okay rating, but then there's the double circle excellent rating. These are the 2 different ratings. What determines getting an excellent rating is mission dependent, and there's even different dialogue during the reply mail after the mission depending on which rank the player got to hint towards how to get a better one. But for a lot of levels, it's basically time dependent. Gotta rush, right? Well, that's when I tell y'all about the card system. And I know what y'all are thinking, Spacey, do you even structure these videos? And no, not really. But there's a collectible card system of these 3D models that play in FMV when viewing them. I guess it's pretty neat in a sort of low poly 3D aesthetic way if y'all enjoy looking at old models, but they don't functionally do anything. Nothing does anything. Nothing has meaning. Welcome to real life. But what I'm trying to say is that there are chests in nearly every level giving cards or money. The problem with this is that they're hidden. This game's only real incentive to explore. However, if I choose to explore, chances are I'm not getting the excellent rating because that's usually time dependent. What a total clash! To tie up the money and card system, that's exactly what money is used for. Besides buying the one-time weapons during missions, it's for buying card packs at stores. Like, I don't know if people find this fun, but I guess people play modern gacha games. And I guess this is like a modern gacha game where instead of hot anime characters, I'm pulling out hot 3D models, which is a lot cooler. Fact. So, why bother with all this optional card stuff in the first place? 1, well, dang, I need something to do in this game. And 2, collecting all the cards gives the player a new support AI based off the Sentai guys. Which, yes, I haven't mentioned the support AI until now. And that's because I don't like the default support AI, so getting a change was a high priority. The default voice is basically this old man, and I don't know, maybe I just don't like old people, but the voice just didn't sit right with me. I think this is like a comedy thing in Japan, having an old guy yelling to increase the funny absurdity. I know one of the Parodius games had an old guy narrator screaming at the player throughout the game. Honestly, considering that the other two unlockable voices are in-game characters, I'm surprised they didn't make the chief the default voice. But yes, I wanted to change this voice, so I wanted to get the cards. But I felt like some cards would only appear in chests and levels, not at the gacha shop, and there's no telling for any of this crap. So now that I explained money, the okays, and the excellence. So ranking also unlocks a new support AI voice, being a Muu Muu. But on top of that, completing all missions with an excellent rating gives a special ending cutscene. It's a mess. No, actually,
It's a bitch.
maybe I'm making too much of a big deal out of this. The player can go back and replay missions later on to score everything in 100%, which just all feels so unfulfilling, like finishing a mission just to be told I suck. If I just say the cards are pointless, then exploring maps is pointless, and I like exploring around in Jumping Flash. It makes me understand that while in some ways this feels like the most fleshed out the series has gotten with all these systems, mechanics, world maps, and the like, it also feels like so much pointless fluff. Like sitting through the opening page of a mission, load screen, then watch a cutscene, load screen again, before finally the mission starts, just for it to be over as soon as it starts because some missions are so short that I spent more time on the cutscene than the loading than the actual gameplay. It's times like these I wish I could go back to smoothly going between levels like the first two games. I remember this comment someone put on a speedrun video for this game that just says most of the run is just skipping cutscenes. The missions are just too short, and a lot of the time the game encourages beating them as fast as possible. Maybe it's more unique than doing the same collect the 4 things as the original games, but I miss being able to explore open, colorful worlds, utilizing Robbit's unique moveset to hop and find my own way in order to navigate throughout them. Robbit, my god, is the opposite of all that, linear paths and missions. I'm taking an expected path that many others have taken. Robbit's unique moveset has had all the expression stripped from it. The game is literally telling me which platform to hop to and from. If I didn't play the previous games, I'd be saying, I love this character's movements, but I wish I could be playing them in a game where its potential can be more realized. So with all that in mind, I really do wonder why Robbit Monsieur is my favorite one. I know what you're all thinking, Spacey, my god! And no, Robbit, my god! Yeah, I mean, maybe I like them all equally, but something about Flash 3's world, characters, charm, style just appeals to me more. That it tried so hard to be something different from the previous games. And maybe it's thanks to the previous games that I can appreciate this one more. If I want to just chill and vibe with Robbit's gameplay, I'll play through Flash 1 and 2. If I want to play something that feels more like a full game, then I'll play Robbit, my god. And while I encourage y'all to try all 3 of these games, keyword 3, I really want people to try this one the most. It's a lot more flawed than the previous games in my eyes, but golly, it's got charm the others don't. Only problem is that if y'all are running this on a virtual PlayStation, if you catch my drift, I recommend save stating to Super Hell before entering the volcano stage. I don't know why that stage kept crashing on me. Watch out. And remember to save after every mission just in case. The player has to save manually, so learn where that is. But with all that in mind, how about we wrap this up, alright?
Ready to rock? 1 down. 2 down. 3 down. Let's boogie.
The Jumping Flash series is such a unique and beautiful set of games. Coming up before there was a standard for 3D platforming games, it presented ideas and gameplay that even to this day is still unique. And its legacy still lives on somewhat, With Jumping Flash 1 being on the PS1 Classic, y'all know back when companies were like scamming people by just dropping consoles that were emulators with a few ROMs on them. I heard bad things about the PlayStation 1, but it's neat that Jumping Flash was still recognized as an important defining game of the console. In some ways, Robbity still lives on, and that makes me happy. Jumping Flash 1 is a great start to welcome the player to the world, a fresh breezy playthrough of fresh ideas. Jumping Flash 2 is more greatness. With a past to look back on, devs created what some consider the pinnacle of the series, the core of Jumping Flash, perfected. Pocket Muu Muu is an interesting time relic where gaming peripherals were hot and everywhere, and games were being made about them. And Robbity Monsieur is unlike the rest of the series, daring, independent, and ready to present the player with something new, familiar, and a bit of a longer, complete experience. I love this series. And I'm glad I got to play and talk about all these games. I hope y'all enjoyed this too. Maybe it will never happen, but I would love to see Robbity return. Robbity Monsieur really showed potential of a story about this rabbit traveling across these different planets to help people. I want to see more of that, with every game having a whole new cast of characters and a whole new environment to explore. There's so much potential. So, if these games seem interesting, give them a try. At least game 1. I think there's something valuable to experiencing this and placing the self back to when it was made, and to see such a unique approach to what was a new genre. So, give that one a spin. Me, however, it seems I got some things I need to do. Actually, it seems we all got things to do. So, without further ado, let's hop to it. Hey, thanks for watching. There wasn't originally going to be an outro for this video. I ended up recording several, but it was depressive, spacey, going on rants and crap. But I'm here to lampoon on Manic, because I'll be honest, I effed up. So throughout the video, I did this whole thing with me calling Robbity they, them, and how it led up to the pronouns joke. And this is just something I have to get off my chest, because it's gonna haunt me to the end of the time if I don't mention it. But doing this kind of crap and insinuating what I was insinuating about characters that I don't own, that you all don't own, I think it's fucking weird. And I shouldn't have made this whole joke or this whole stance of me calling Robbity they, them. Like, that crap's just weird. Because he's obviously meant to be a guy. Like, I mean, to be fair, in the manual they refer to him as him, and then they also refer to him as it in like the same paragraph. So it's cool that they didn't care either. And I never straight out said Robbity was they, them. I just called them they, them. But yeah, still not a good joke by me. Maybe it's just one of those things that didn't translate well into video, and maybe I shouldn't have based the whole video on that joke. But yeah, that was my bad. Anyways, this video should have been out way earlier, but I'm garbage. I'm gamer bad. But yeah, thanks for watching. I don't want this to be too long, so I'm just gonna dip. Catch y'all later. I'm out of here.